All right, everybody. Welcome to Talkin' Ball live with Pat Leonard. This is the Tank Bowl watch along edition of Talkin' Ball live with Pat Leonard here from New Jersey, not at Allegiant Stadium in person, prioritizing the family during this Christmas and holiday season. The Giants season, of course, lost. However, there are some things to play for. Primarily, you have the future of Jackson Dart to consider, the future of GM Joe Shane to consider. But we all know what this game is about. It's about the Giants and whether they can lose and get the number one overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft. Now, the Cleveland Browns were one of three teams, along with the Giants and the Las Vegas Raiders, that could earn the number one overall pick going into this week. But the Browns just upset the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's down to the Raiders and the Giants. If the Giants win this game, they can still only fall as far as two. So you're guaranteed essentially a top two pick based on how today's results are working out, is how it's shaping up. But a loss and the number one pick, there's still a large difference between that and drafting number two overall, especially when considering what you can do with that pick if you're trading it and what assets you can acquire in return. As it stands now, the Giants' chances of earning the number one pick and the Raiders almost identical, both right there in the 30s. I believe the exact number as we head into this game, the Raiders have a 37.3% chance or the Giants have a 37.6% chance, Raiders 36.2. But here's what's at stake. If the Giants lose this game, they have a 73% chance of getting the number one overall pick. That was heading into the weekend prior to the 1:00 slate. But conversely, if they win the game, it drops to only a 6% chance of getting the number one overall pick in April. The Raiders, 69% chance if they lose, under 1% chance if they don't. So that's what's on the line. The headline going into this game, though, as I sit here and talk to you all here on Talkin' Ball live with Pat Leonard, welcome. I see all of you rolling in. We'll get to all of your questions ASAP. We got Riddled, Coach D, Dan, Hunter Keller, Jacob, and everybody rolling in to watch this game together here on Talkin' Ball live with Pat Leonard on the YouTube channel, brought to you by MyBookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom, Chaga Mushroom, Super Drink, and Salad for Men. And the headline of this game is now no longer just the draft pick and the tankathon and the Raiders sitting their two best players in Max Crosby and Brock Bowers. The headline going into this game as the kickoff is happening momentarily, the ball is into the air. Deonte Banks fielding it and crossing the 20 before being brought down by the Raiders for the Giants game opening drive. The headline of this game, everybody, is what was reported by Ian Rappaport on NFL Network this morning. What Ian Rappaport reported was, and I quote, that the Giants playing for the number one pick today, quote, expect them to evaluate all options, including looking into Fernando Mendoza, the Indiana quarterback and Heisman Trophy winner, before they make a decision of how they are going to proceed if they have this pick. So that further puts Jackson Dart, the Giants rookie quarterback, on notice heading into this game, reinforces what we've discussed, which is as Jackson Dart delivers a first down completion to Wan'Dale Robinson, reinforces what we've discussed, which is even though Joe Shane traded up to get Jackson Dart, there were clear signs, including my own reporting and information, that Brian Daboll was the one who steered it Jackson Dart's way as they were intent on selecting a quarterback this year, as Tyrone Tracy takes it up the gut and crosses the first down marker and moves the chains. But also tucked underneath the national report today that the Giants would consider drafting a quarterback at number one over Jackson Dart was on the chyron, on the screen below, as Ian Rappaport, the NFL insider, was speaking about the Giants. It read below his face, it said, GM Joe Shane likely to remain with team for draft. Now, this was just an absolute bomb, a grenade dropped into the middle of Sunday morning for Giants fans who have been watching this team that now has a 3-24 record in the last 27 games, 5-27 record in the last 32 games. And going into this game against the Raiders is 0-8 on the road this season and one loss away from recording their first winless season on the road since 1976. Not to mention, of course, the Giants have lost a franchise record 13 straight road games dating back to Seattle, October 6th, 2024. And it would also give the Giants, if they lose this game, 10 straight losses, which would tie the franchise record they set last year. But despite all of that, the national report today drops in that Joe Schoen is likely to remain with the Giants for this draft. Now, that's absolutely fascinating. How do you take it? I want to know from the Giants fan base, how do you react when you see that message on the bottom of the screen? Very interesting. I just saw as I'm talking, Jermaine Illuminor, the Giants right tackle, he just got called for a false start for jumping early, essentially, like setting back early, kicking his right leg back to gain more leverage on his block. Jermaine's been doing that all season. And some of these games, I was fascinated and surprised that it wasn't being called, because you look at, I think it was Jawan Taylor in Kansas City and some other linemen going back to last year. This has been an emphasis. This has been something that the NFL going back to last season, it felt like was really honing in on. Officials were keying in on and calling often. Illuminor has been getting away with it this season, and they just haven't been blowing the whistle, so he keeps doing it, to his credit. And then you walk into a game like this, he does it again. It's just as blatant as it's been all these other times. And suddenly the whistle blows and you get called for a false start. So it's just always strange how different games are called as Jackson Dart rolls out and is pressured and sacked. A huge loss there after he completed a few to Wan'Dale Robinson. Looks like, as I'm looking at my television, that Jackson may already be clear of the yardage he had last week against Minnesota. He's 3 for 3 with 24 yards passing at the moment. He had 33 last week in that horrible performance against the Minnesota Vikings. So definitely important for Dart to have this kind of start passing to get his confidence back, and feel like he is making a strong case for himself once again, especially coming off of that Sunday morning report. But I'm extremely curious to hear from you all what you think of the report about Joe Schoen coming back. Oh no, Daniel Bellinger. Looks like incomplete, and he took a huge hit over the middle of the field. I'm surprised he got up. Daniel Bellinger with a big opportunity today. Theo Johnson, one of the many Giants not playing in this game, didn't even make the trip due to an illness. Bellinger just caught a ball over the middle and got smashed and dropped it, and actually went down pretty hard. Wasn't moving at first. I would love to see him get checked out in the blue medical tent. That would be nice. Definitely an emphasis of mine whenever I'm watching NFL games. Such a violent sport, and you really want to prioritize everybody's health first and foremost. And that's something I'm always watching for. Jermaine just jumped again, got called again. Fascinating, because Max Crosby was one of two key players, along with Brock Bowers from the Raiders, who was shut down before this game. Crosby, of course, very publicly frustrated and angered by that, left the team facility, posted a video this morning of him shooting jump shots in his house on the basketball court. And Illuminor was tweeting, "Oh, disappointing. I wanted to go against the best, this and that." And he's not even lined up across from one of the best in the NFL now. And now two false starts on the Giants' opening drive by their right tackle. 3rd and 29 for the Giants now. So a dump off to Devin Singletary, and they're going to end up punting. Thank you so much for being here, all Giants fans who have joined me. We got Riddled says, "Let's not win." Doesn't want the Giants to win. I hear you. Coach D says, "Giants need to draft Mendoza. Dart ain't an NFL quarterback." Dan points out that the incompetency continues if that report on NFL Network about Schoen likely remaining with the team for the draft is true, and says, "Hope the Giants lose by 30 today and Schoen is fired tomorrow morning." Yeah, I would say my take on the Joe Schoen report nationally, and this is informed speculation on my part. My take is that that report is coming from Joe Schoen's direction. That, of course, he wants it out there that he's expected to be back, and he wants the conversation going that Joe Schoen is likely to remain with the organization deep into the spring. But he doesn't have control of that. And so I would say as somebody who covers this team daily, don't view that as a certainty just because that was reported that Joe Shane is definitely going to be the Giants general manager through that time. I think I view that more as the general manager working the media to try to get his desired result. And also at this time of year, the organizations don't always mind things like that coming out because they view it as like a trial or a test balloon to float into the air and see what the national reaction, not just the local reaction is. Because, of course, unless the Giants have their heads buried in the sand, they know exactly how the local fan base feels about the general manager. Hunter, great to see you. Jacob, what's up? Yes, we talked about doing this watch along for this game since I wasn't making the trip to Vegas. So here we are. Great example of our community working as one to create the kind of content that you guys are looking for. If you notice, too, I'm rocking some new gear. I got a Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard sweatshirt on, and I got one of the many varieties of the Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard cap with an alternate logo here. So you can find that. There's a link on my YouTube channel that you guys are on now. I will also put it into the queue, into the chat queue as we go so that you can check it out at your leisure. I know Christmas has passed, but a great gift for Giants and NFL and sports fans in general. A lot of good, high quality merch. And if you're a diehard talking baller, a great way, along with supporting our sponsors, to support the show. Am I buying the Mendoza smoke? I am buying. I do think, like I said, I think the suggestion that Shane is expected to be here through the draft, I view that as more Shane being hopeful. As far as the idea that they will consider Mendoza and every option if they hold the number 1 overall pick, that's certainly what you want out there and what you're going to say in order to create leverage. If you're the Giants or whoever holds the number 1 pick, you want there to be action. You want to receive phone calls from interested parties as Ashton Genty takes the handoff and the Giants run defense knocks him down for a loss. They were definitely ready for that play call, keyed in on that play call. Something to watch developmentally for the Giants. Of course, Brian Burns, second in the NFL with 15 sacks, but also Abdul Carter, the rookie edge, a sack in 3 straight games and 2 forced fumbles and a fumble recovery in that time. And the Raiders offense, one of the worst in football. Their left tackle, Stone Forsythe, the Giants cut after his work in training camp. He was essentially their last string left tackle and was struggling severely against the Giants pass rushers when he was facing them in practice and during training camp. And now Burns and Abdul Carter and the Giants edges going against him here today. Thornton with a foot out there, or else that would have been a big gainer there from Geno Smith. Sets up 3rd and 12 and maybe an opportunity for Dexter Lawrence to get his first full sack of the season. It's been since middle of last season that Dexter Lawrence has registered a full sack on a quarterback. Geno Smith hits Michael Mayer, former Notre Dame tight end, over the middle. Looks like he was brought down just before the first down sticks here. And the Raiders are going to end up punting deep in their own zone. See who the tackle was made there by there. We got Javon Holland in on the stop. And Raheem Lane. All right, let's see. Right, how is it possible that Joe would stay? Alex says, that's a great question, Alex. I think it's because if he did, it would be because he has 1 year left on his deal and also because he is protected. And what I mean by that is connected at a high level with ownership and people in the organization who have significant say-so. There's no merit-based reason. And I say that from a position of just evaluating a team on its results and on its talent and on its lack of culture and ability. Looks like we have a little bit of a review of this spot here. Mayer's elbow was down as he was spinning, so tough to see. Call on the field, spot of line to gain, 4th and 1. Oh, Raiders challenging. Pete Carroll is going to get fired at the end of this season. So some interesting results today when you talk about the coaching carousel too. You have Tampa Bay losing to the Dolphins. Todd Bowles, his Buccaneers team really skidding out of control right now. That's gotten out of hand fast. They have lost 4 in a row and 7 of 8 down the stretch here. Could be a new coach in Tampa Bay. Like I said, Pete Carroll is on his way out with Vegas. And Atlanta, you saw Jake Glazer's report about Matt Ryan possibly joining the front office there. That is expected to be a situation that turns over in some significant way. Obviously, the Giants already fired their coach. Is Joe Shane going to get fired? Is he not? All right, let's see what else you guys have to say here. Stevie Key says, nice piano, Pat. Yeah, virtual background here, Stevie. In my den at the moment, and hopefully one day my den looks like this. That would be nice, but just a virtual background to get it looking nice and clean for you all. I'm not gonna pretend. Brian says fire Shane. Yes, the piano is back. Exactly. Yes. Brian wants to lose and trade back. Brian says if they trade Dart, I'm done. Yeah, let's talk about that, because how do you guys feel about Jackson? Because it's one thing to say, hey, if you have the number 1 overall pick, you have to look at all options. And I think you're irresponsible as a front office if you don't evaluate everything, regardless of what your roster looks like. You just should. But I feel like the conversation about Jackson has gone from, it was like 2 months ago, it was Jackson Dart, the new face of the exciting Giants. And now, after a couple of bad games, including his worst game as a pro in the Vikings, you have people out there like, is he really the guy? Should they just draft somebody else? I, for one, have whiplash reacting to that type of dialogue and discourse going from one extreme to another. I feel like you should have a better evaluation of NFL players so that you're not knee-jerk reacting to one result after another. What I mean by that is this. When Jackson first came into the lineup and started playing for the Giants, I thought that he was a player who showed promise and also showed a need for growth in some areas. After some of his worst games, Patriots and Vikings especially, with Mike Kafka, now with Dable gone, you have people talking about maybe he isn't as good of a player as we thought. But I see in those games the same things I saw in the other games. I see some signs of promise, and then I see some reasons why he's still a rookie and is still developing. Certainly, there have been fewer results and fewer points in those 2 games that I just mentioned. But I think the lack of infrastructure, the adjustments, the on-the-fly firings, and the integration of a new offensive emphasis, and let's be clear, the leaked organizational talking point that they don't want Jackson Dart being reckless as a runner, and then the coinciding Mike Kafka game plans, which are clearly emphasizing that they don't want Dart to run as often as he ran under Brian Daboll. They want him to be a passer who runs, not a runner who throws, which I understand in a vacuum, but also Jackson, a huge part of his talent, of his skill set is his running, right? It is his mobility. It is his way that he can take a bump, contact balance, stay up, get those extra yards, fight for it. And also the threat of the run opens up the pass, much like a Jalen Hurts ends up doing that for the Eagles, even though I wouldn't put him in the same conversation. I'm just saying this is the kind of quarterback you're looking at here. It's a quarterback whose running ability sets up the rest of his game in a lot of ways. But what they want him to be now is a pocket passer who only scrambles when absolutely necessary. And for Jackson, that's a tough way to live, because now you're turning into somebody he's not. and it's in his head. As Wan'Dale Robinson drops a pass that should have gone for a first down, and it was high. He went up and got it. Nice play by the Raiders DB there to knock it out. Not a perfect pass by any imagination there from Jackson, but also highlights there, what you're missing sometimes with Wan'Dale, which is, he's undersized and your target is smaller, frankly. Giants punt coverage doesn't give up a touchdown here. That's good news. Looks like we got a super chat in the queue. Who's setting the example to kick it off here? Christopher checks in with $5. Christopher, thank you so much for doing that. Yeah, reminder, everybody, if you want to purchase a super chat or a super sticker, I will answer your comment or question first or next in the queue. You will bump to the top. That's a great way to support us. And Christopher, I really appreciate you doing that. This is pretty unique what we're doing. I haven't done this before. I'm obviously normally at the road games, at every Giants game. Basically, in the last 3 years or so, the Daily News and I have picked one game, one trip where you hang back, budgetary reasons, try to be smart about how you're attacking, covering the team all year. Because remember, it's not just the season anymore. It's Senior Bowl, it's Combine, it's owners meetings, and, it's joint practices in the summer and all of that. And so, normally I'm in the stadium and we're doing Talkin' Ball live after the game. And by the way, we will do Talkin' Ball post game live. There is a separate link for a Talkin' Ball post game live today. This is the Talkin' Ball Tank Bowl first half watch along of Giants Raiders with Pat Leonard, New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer. This is my Talkin' Ball podcast, NFL podcast. We cover the entire NFL, but our bread and butter, living here in northern New Jersey, covering the New York Giants, is this proud franchise with 4 Super Bowls that has fallen on hard times and is looking to get off the mat and be proud of itself once again. We are sponsored here by MyBookie, by Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, by Sal Loretta for Men in Midland Park, New Jersey, luxury menswear and tailoring for all of my arrival videos. And wanted to remind you guys for Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, which is owned by our good friend Jared, who hails from Houston, Texas originally. And just doing my unboxing here, he sent me something in the mail. This is the Hooks, Rubs, and Spices pepper sauce. This is a brand new product that Jared developed. It's a delicious hot sauce, pepper sauce. You can put it on your eggs like I do in the morning. I get some eggs, some black beans, some toast with jelly going with my coffee. And it's a great way to enjoy it. A little kick. Not too hot, though. If those of you can only handle so much spice, I feel like it's the right balance. And as well as all of Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, you can always find another way, a new way to unlock flavor with Jared's spices, with his rubs, and of course with the new pepper sauce. So what you're going to do is go to hooksrub.com and you're going to use my discount code on hooksrub.com. I'll get that going for you on the channel here. So Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, you're going to use Talkin' Ball as the code. And if you use Talkin' Ball on hooksrub.com now, you'll get 20% off at hooksrub.com. Go get the pepper sauce. And just like I have the Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard gear, Jared's got some great Hooks, Rubs, and Spices gear there as well to check out. So go check out Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, hooksrub.com. Use the code Talkin' Ball. And you can see my other codes for MyBookie with all your sports betting for Boom Chaga, Talkin' Ball 25. Sal Loretta, go there, tell them that I sent you. Word of mouth does the work for you there. MyBookie, you're going to want to tail Pat's picks. I went 12-4 last week and cooking, sizzling, hot finish, hopefully down the stretch all the way to the finish to try to catch my colleague at the Daily News, Antoine Staley, with our picks, picking every spread all season long. Raiders with the ball. Deonte Banks allows a reception, but makes the tackle short of the sticks. That'll bring up third down for the Raiders in this scoreless slugfest between these two horrendous NFL teams. Ready to see the Giants look like a real team today. Will Pat play some piano for us during the commercials? Hey, whatever you want. I'm here to please. Brian says Shane sucks if win the game if they are planning on moving on from Dart. Let's see. Hunter says keep Dart and kick Shane to the curb. Let's see. Alex says if you hire a new GM, they need to run the draft. And it to me, if you hire a new GM, they need to run the draft. And to me, it means Clueless Joe is staying in the role. Let's see. Genty goes through the middle of the Giants defense on 4th and 1 for a first down. Dexter Lawrence, of course, has been party to one of the worst run defenses and defenses in the league. And it doesn't help, even though he's a 2-time second team All-Pro, it is on him as much as it's on anybody else with the Giants that they can't get those stops on the line of scrimmage. Geno Smith rolls out. Brian Burns chases him down and trips him with his leg there. Looks like Geno Smith might have gotten the ball out. Hard to see. Interesting. Burns got away with a leg whip there. Let's see. Burns actually sacked Geno Smith on a similar rollout type play against the Seahawks when Geno was their quarterback there. Look at that leg underneath. And no sack for Brian Burns, they say. Joe B says this team is killing me. Hunter says I made one Giants bet today. Chris Manhertz touchdown with no Theo Johnson. Yes, Daniel, that's right. I understand the question. You guys are nuts. Thomas says, Pat, my PS 84 math says if the Giants lose this, the number 1 pick is a lock. Derek says, reports say that Joe Shane was seen entering the building wearing a Talkin ball beanie. That would be the day that hell freezes over, Derek. Joe B says, that's funny. My wife is wearing the Talkin ball with Pat Leonard G-string. Can't say that's in the shop, Joe B, but go click on that Shopify link I put in the chat, and maybe we've added more products since I last checked. Lewis is having a time watching this game today. Bellinger with the drop. Banks allowing completions. Trey Tucker, one of my plays of the day today, down the field for the Raiders. Genty now carrying Raiders in the red zone against just an awful defense. I'm hoping Pete Carroll went to Geno and said, let's do everything to get a win today, says Italian Cheech, so they can screw the Raiders since they probably will get fired and cut. You know, Cheech, I think I agree with you. I actually had that thought earlier when Carroll challenged that spot on the Michael Mayer play. It's an unusual thing for a coach who is definitely on the way out. And, obviously the discourse going in is that the Raiders are trying to lose this game. So you'd think to yourself, well, what's the difference anyway? But I'm with you. It almost reminds you of, oh boy, whose interception is this? Bobby Okereke jumps the Geno Smith pass, and off he goes across midfield. Bobby O making a play. Dust that turnover chest off. Oh boy. The Tank Bowl is officially underway. Finally, with 2.5 minutes left in the first quarter, we have a play made. Looks like Geno Smith is throw a little bit wide of Michael Mayer, and Bobby O with a nice return. Nice catch, nice return by the veteran linebacker there. And so the Giants will take over on the Raiders side of midfield, still scoreless, with a little over 2 minutes left in the first quarter. Let's see. Yeah, so it is possible that the Raiders with Carroll. Oh, that's what I was saying. It reminds me a little bit of the Patriots coach last year, screwing their draft position with that last win and solidifying that that he was going to get fired by essentially sticking it to the Patriots organization. This is Talking Ball live with Pat Leonard. First half watch along from Northern New Jersey, not at Allegiant Stadium for the game. So I figured after talking to some of you talking ballers about what type of content you want, figured, hey, instead of just doing post-game live, let's do in-game live. Let's do a watch along, and I can analyze what I'm seeing and answer your questions, and we can talk about the team that you love and that you want to see turn around and that, frankly, a lot of you are hoping loses today. Gerard Mayo, that was the coach for the Patriots. I was drawing a blank on his name there. Gerard Mayo winning a late game in his one and only season as head coach and screwing the Patriots as they kicked him out of the building. Lewis says, did they just predict the Eagles game versus the Bills 30-27? I do expect a high-scoring game there. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but I have no respect for the Bills' defense at all. But, of course, with Josh Allen and then with the firepower that the Eagles have as well on offense, that's one of those games that once it gets broken open, I think it'll stay open. You know, Eagles have a pretty good defense, but they've had some games where they've really given up a ton. Showing the replay with Bobby now, Gino just didn't even see him. Gino just threw it to a spot, and Okereke had never vacated that spot, so Gino really didn't read the coverage properly there. 6th career interception for Bobby O. Let's see. What just happened here? My screen went blank? What the heck is this? Man, I'll tell you what, this StreamYard is just a struggle. All right, so let's check out some more of your questions here. Derek says Dart was better with Dable. Dart was obviously had some better production earlier in the season, but I think that the conversation about missing Dable and the stories and all the discourse about, well, was it the right thing to fire Brian Dable now as we watch Jackson Dart, and do they miss him on offense? That completely misses the reason why he was fired in the first place. Like, I think that completely overlooks the whole concept of what was wrong with the organization and what warranted his firing in the first place, from the standpoint of no accountability for the players and enabling of bad habits, poor game management, as well as trade-offs for the production that they were getting in spurts out of quarterbacks, which normally resulted in injuries to their starters, whether it was Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, Jackson Dart here now. So you guys are kind of split on Jackson Dart, right? So Scorpio says not a fan of Jackson Dart. Jackson has shown a lot of promise, still got some bad, still raw. Give him a real coach, says Hunter, as Devin Singletary scampers down to the half-yard line or 1-yard line. Singletary and Tracy, definitely the beneficiaries of the way that the season has proceeded and progressed here for New York, getting a lot of touches with Mike Kafka sticking to and committing to the run. Some good blocking there on the inside across the field. Austin Schlottman at center, doing work now with John Michael Schmitz out and on injured reserve for the remainder of the season. Let's see if they run a play before the end of the first quarter here. Looks like they're going to try to. Is that Chapman at fullback? Chapman at fullback. Singletary looks like he's in. Yeah. So the Giants are first on the board. Devin Singletary on the board. Giants take a lead. Giants out to try to win the game. How do you feel about that? Things change quickly for a New York QB. Only takes one bad game with this team for them to turn on you. That's for sure, but you do have to be careful about that, right? Because to bail on a player as a New York Giant feels very premature. It feels very premature when you consider how important it is as a Giants fan and as an NFL fan to recognize just because a player struggles on a bad team doesn't mean that a better team with a better infrastructure and roster around them can't unlock something that you haven't seen there yet. So we've learned over the last several years with players like Leonard Williams, Julian Love, Xavier McKinney, Sterling Shepard, even a guy whose career was essentially considered over in New York before he went and gave some good ball to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a couple of years. Just rattling off some key names there. But I think it's extremely dangerous to determine that a guy is not a good enough player because he's had a bad season with the Giants. I think we've already learned at this point, or we should have learned at this point, that judging someone as a failed draft pick or as a bust or as a player who you can't get good football out of just because he struggled during a season with the Giants, I think we should have learned from that. So reminder, we're going to go live on here through the end of the first half. And then I'm going to be back on our new post-game live link once the game is over. So that way, during the second half, I can do my writing for the New York Daily News. And then we will jump back on YouTube for another half hour, 45 minutes after the game to download on what we saw, on what the result is, and on where we go from here. All right, let's get back into the queue. Make sure I didn't miss any super chats. Okay. All right. If they had a better evaluation of personnel, they would have had a quarterback competition this summer, says Jossel. That's a great point, Ja. And this is a huge point when you discuss the consideration of returning with Joe Shane as your general manager is the misevaluations in the building. It's not just the problems of not drafting the correct players in the drafts or free agent misses. It's also how they operate the team. And what you're hitting on, Ja, is extremely important, which is how do you go into an offseason like they did last spring? You come out of it, first of all, with players who don't want to play for you. You swing and miss on several of your top options. You land on Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart, and then you don't make it a competition, and you end up in a position where the best quarterback on your roster, Jameis Winston, ends up furthest down on your depth chart. And Jameis Winston, remember this, not only did he not compete, Jameis Winston took the same amount of reps essentially during practice in camp as Tommy DeVito. So he was on the Tommy DeVito side of the roster, not on the Jackson Dart, Russell Wilson side of the roster. And that, in my estimation, is the best quarterback on the team at the moment. As far as like if you were going to play a game today to try to win a game, he would be the quarterback on the Giants roster that I would pick to play it. And he didn't compete for the job at all this year. And I think that, to your point, that speaks volumes on their personnel process. Hunter says Jackson has nothing but injuries around him. Do you have to consider that as well? Cheech says if we have the number one pick, we keep Dart for next year, trade the pick for first future picks. And if Dart doesn't look good, then the 2027 QB class will be better, and we would have had the draft capital to trade up. Christopher says, I think this is ridiculous. I can't believe this is a conversation about Mendoza. We have what appears to be a proven commodity. We can't judge him on this Kafka clown show. And that was the point I was getting at earlier, Christopher, was I just I just think it's it reflects to be this is just my opinion. I think you're telling on yourself that you don't know much about football if you've watched a couple games here from Dart the last few weeks and you have a dramatically different opinion of him than you had of him 2 months ago. Like, I think then you just weren't, at it you weren't efficiently watching his tape. Like, I don't think now that Jackson can't play and that you need to replace him immediately because of his last couple games. And I didn't think after his first couple games that he was a flawless quarterback that was so clearly the future of the franchise. You know what I mean? Like, I think, you know, just got a text from an NFL source says, "No one on the field for either team should have a job next year." Their evaluation of the quality of football that they're watching. And this is the thing. When I make critical comments about the Giants or about a play or about whatever it is, this is not like just me sitting here waxing about what I think. And it's certainly not what I want to be true. It's the evaluation of you know, a a billion-dollar enterprise and how it's functioning and how it needs to climb out of the gutter. Some good tackling there on the edge there for the Giants. 3rd and 5 for Geno Smith. Obviously, a lot for Geno to prove. He's that kind of player. He's always out trying to prove something. Bolin brings pressure. Geno Smith hits Ashton Genty on like a mini wheel route. Nobody guarding him. Makes the catch. Raiders first down. But Geno Smith, of course, full circle moment here. Full circle moment every time he plays the Giants. I mean, what a seminal moment in Giants history for Geno Smith back in 2017 when Jerry Reese and Ben McAdoo benched Eli Manning. John Mara, of course, part of that decision as well. And Eli Manning benched. Geno Smith starts against the Raiders. And then McAdoo Reese fired the day after that loss. Geno Smith vilified and, of course, made the scapegoat and the villain in that scenario. Got his revenge on the Giants with the Seahawks. Then the Giants went to Seattle and beat Geno. And so now here he is with the Raiders in a position where he got paid after kind of resurging in his career in Seattle. And turns out he was joining a program that, even though they were paying him good money, did not have an offensive line to protect him. I mean, this is definitely one of the, if not the worst offensive lines in football. And so that has led to Geno trying to force the ball into tight spaces and get rid of the ball under duress. And the result of that has been interceptions, turnovers like we saw there to Bobby Okereke, which set up the Devin Singletary touchdown. And, a down year for Geno. But still a good quarterback in the NFL, but like a lot of QBs in the NFL, needs a good offensive line and a good structure around him. Nice tackle there by Drew Phillips against the run. Raiders got some extra yardage there on a penalty on Roy Robertson Harris after a nice run by Ashton Genty. And yeah, as far as Mendoza goes, certainly I think you have to consider all options, but as I sit here right now, I'm on the side of if you gain the number 1 pick as the New York Giants, you use that as trade bait to acquire more picks and assets to rebuild a broken franchise and team rather than just to replace Jackson Dart, who's shown plenty of upside, even though we've seen some downside, for another unknown rookie commodity. And also remember, at least so far, like Jackson's intangibles have been good too. It's not like I think I would understand that conversation and argument more as Geno Smith gets sacked on 3rd and 6. I think I would understand that more if Jackson wasn't a good representative of the team or wasn't conducting himself like a franchise quarterback. Let's take a look who was in on this. There were like 3 Giants who brought him down. So Carter flushed him into the pocket. Alexander got Geno Smith in the face mask, but nothing called there. Oh, he swiped at the ball. Yeah, so it looked like Carter, Burns, and Muasau. They'll probably split that with Carter and Burns, I would think. But so the Raiders on the board with a field goal, 7-3, with 9:42 to play in the second quarter. This is the first half Tank Bowl watch along with Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News here in northern New Jersey, typically at these games with the Giants, of course, in person, but hanging back here. Wanted to stick with the family. This was my pick this year. If I had to miss one game, I correctly adjudged that the game would not matter as far as playoffs or anything related to the team's fate going into January. So didn't think it would be relevant or worth being away from the family to attend if I had to pick one. And then the second thing was, just making sure we're prioritizing the right things and prioritizing our content here with all of you, because this community that we've built here on YouTube, this Talking Ball community full of diehard Giants fans and really passionate and knowledgeable fans who are always bringing great questions and teaching me really as much as I think I'm able to teach you guys. So really grateful for everyone who is here. Please support our sponsors and support the channel. My Bookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom Chaga, and Salaretta are the sponsors. You can support the Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard store. I put the link in the chat. We got hoodies, we got hats, we got all kinds of stuff. And then, as I said, purchase a super chat or a super sticker, and your comment or question will elevate to the top of the queue. Steven says it's very simple. If the new GM wants to draft another quarterback, fine, but keep both and let them compete, then trade the other in a year or two. Seems like a measured comment and analysis from Steven. Hunter says, give him a healthy Malik, and a healthy Scadaboo, and whoever they draft. Francis says, the fans are fickle and angry. Daboll was the pound of flesh paid. In retrospect, Bowen should have exited first. Too early to be down on the quarterback dart. Let's remember our history with Sims and Eli. Right. Daniel says, come on now. Who is dart throwing to? His options are so limited. If Joe Shane drafts a new quarterback, he should be fired, paid picks to trade up for Jackson for a coach who he should have fired last year. Francis says, belated Merry Christmas, Pat. Belated Merry Christmas and happy holidays to all of you. Merry Christmas, Francis. Thank you for saying that. Hope all of you are enjoying times with your families as I am with mine. Yeah, Brian says he would rather draft Mendoza, or if they are going to draft Mendoza, I would rather win and keep Dart. Jacob says, Pat, a lot of Giants content creators do this every week. Oh, for sure, Jacob. There are content creators out there, great content creators, diehard, dedicated Giants content creators who do this for sure. I just meant as far as those of us who are on the beat, covering the team in the locker room every day and attending these games every week at home and on the road, speaking with the players and working our sources around the league. This is just something that we are not able to do. I am not able to do typically because I'm at the game, and it's not something that I can log on to and do while I'm there at the stadium. It's not set up for that. I'm sitting in the press box watching the game with other reporters sitting right next to me in a group in a loud stadium. So it's just a different type of venue and content, because as much as I respect all the content creators you're talking about, I respectfully believe that I can offer more when it comes to insight and analysis and sourcing and connections to this league and to these organizations, to the Giants, and be able to steer you guys in an informed direction because of my role and my place and my expertise. And I hope that's what I can offer you all. Hunter checks in with a super chat. Thank you, Hunter. He says, what players both sides of the ball for us would you consider starters on a good team, including injured players who are under contract? So that's a good question. As Tyrone Tracy rattles off a couple runs here, and the Giants lead 7-3 with 9 minutes left in the second quarter. I think, funny enough, one of the names that jumps to my mind is Jameis Winston. Like, I feel like, he's one guy on their roster who I keep thinking about how much he could help some of these other teams out there. But like a healthy Cordell Flott, Jackson design run, read option keeper for a first down across midfield. Haven't seen many of those since Mike Kafka has taken over from Brian Daboll. Certainly a lot fewer. So we got a read option, fake handoff to Tyrone Tracy and a run off the right side, and then he gets down before taking a massive hit. So nice play by Dart there, good execution. And then they work that into a play action drop back pass to Isaiah Hodgins, who then breaks a tackle and gets 8 or 9 yards. That's good offense there. I think Tyrone Tracy has some ability to him, in answer to your question, Hunter, as far as now starter. I don't think he's a number one running back on a good team on another team, but he's definitely a guy who could be in the mix on a team that could chip in. Theo Johnson's drops have really killed him. There have been times where he's shown flashes of being potentially the type of guy that you're asking about, but he drops too many passes to truly be in that category. Oh, Dart just took a big hit, although he did escape immediate pressure and got the first down. I mean, Dexter Lawrence, obviously, Brian Burns, obviously, those are two guys. But after that, few and far between. I mean, now a guy like Paulson Adebo at corner, he's a player who I feel like if you put him on a better team with better players around him, he gets better. The numbers and the stats that he had as a Saint compared to what he has now with the Giants and how little of an impact he's made throughout this season. That's one of those that makes you shake your head. And think of it this way. When we talked about like not bailing on Dart, think of like Adebo being a player who was on a team like the Giants, and then you judging that he's not any good because he only has one interception late in the season and he hasn't broken up enough passes or made enough impact plays. But then he goes to some other defense with a better coordinator, and suddenly you're saying, wow, we misevaluated this guy. Looks like he's actually a real contributor. He's a real CB2. And so that's an example of how a guy could be a real NFL starter on a team, but then go to another team and look like he doesn't belong. And why did we pay for him in the first place? Not that the Saints were world beaters when he was there either, but just there's a difference sometimes between, let's say, asking a guy like Paulson Adebo to be CB2 on the Saints versus CB1 on the Giants. Another design run for Jackson Dart. Oh, he took an absolute shot there. But he scores a touchdown, gets up, headbutting some of his teammates, and the Giants take a 10-3 lead. Who was this who hit Jackson here? 2 design runs. Oh, man. 32, Johnson Jr. there. Dart almost had his helmet knocked off, but he holds on into the end zone. 8th career rushing touchdown, 4th in the NFL. So this is a good example of the difference between, as they showed Dart and Camp Scattaboo high-fiving, this is a good example between the way that Dart can be effective and how it connects to his usage. Is if you ask him to only be a pocket passer and you take his running away from him, right now we still need to see a lot more there. But when you allow him to run, when you call design runs, and when you deploy him as a weapon and a runner and not just a quarterback who occasionally scrambles, he becomes the first round talent or the late first round talent or whatever you want to call him that the Giants determined he was and traded up for in the spring. Now, obviously, the delicate part of that is, can he stay on the field if he keeps taking hits? That's been the ongoing conversation and concern. And certainly some of the hits he's taken and the style of play he has persisted with has not quieted that conversation. But what you saw just now is an example of why this is the way that he needs to be used. That has to be a part of his game, because if you're going to call Jackson Dart onto the carpet and say, "Hey, the Giants might consider replacing this guy if they end up with the number 1 pick." If you're going to put that pressure on him, then you do need to call a game for him against the Raiders today that allows him to use his best assets and gives him his best chance to succeed. Let's see, Hunter, you asked what other players on the Giants would start on good teams. Like I said, I think Flott, based on the player that he's been this year, could be. Dexter, when he's in shape and he's at his top level. Burns could do that as well. And like I said, Tracy, Theo Johnson, can be contributors in supporting roles on better teams. Devin Singletary. By the way, Darius Slayton held on a catch on that last drive as well to help set up that Jackson Dart touchdown. But to your point, Hunter, not a ton of names on that list that you're asking about. All right, let's see. Gout is not a fan of Kafka's. Josh Soul says, I think Kafka is better than most folks give him credit for. Honestly, what we are seeing is growing pains from development. Chris says, this Mendoza stuff is coming from somewhere because getting him with the number 1 pick was the last thing on my mind. So unthinkable. Robbie says, could the Steelers miss the playoffs? Yeah, so now it's the Steelers. Right now, because of the Steelers' loss to the Cleveland Browns, we now have a scenario in the AFC where it is Steelers versus Ravens for the division, for the AFC North, and not just for the AFC North, but for a playoff spot, because every other AFC playoff spot is clinched. Denver, New England, Jacksonville, Buffalo, Houston, and the Chargers are all in. The only one that isn't clinched is the Steelers or the Ravens. So they will play next week for the division and for a playoff spot. So yes, the Steelers could end up outside the playoffs. Abdul Carter just made a huge tackle for a loss on Trey Tucker on like an end around attempt by the Raiders. Man, both of these teams really stink. Abdul Carter, of course, finally delivering with some promise down the stretch of this lost season. Had by all objective measures, a bad rookie year and was not held properly accountable as a young rookie. So you hope that better habits and more accountability that has been stressed in the building recently is going to translate into consistent and continued production and more of those good habits as, heading into 2026 into his second year. An explosive player, but needs to get stronger. Certainly the usage of him inside helps him, moving him around. Like, he can play on the edge, but I think that standing him up at linebacker and running him into the interior offensive line, right? Letting him take on a center, letting him take on a guard, like that helps him. As Geno Smith delivers to Trey Tucker on 3rd and 13. Looks like there's a flag on the play. See who is that on? Taking a while to make their call here. Holding on the Raiders. They stink. Jocelyn doesn't think Mendoza's that good. Derek says Hook's pepper sauce. I put that ish on everything. Where do I have it here? Hook's rub. And Alex says Hook's rub made my Christmas fillets stand out. They're great. Alex, appreciate you saying that. Hooksrub.com. The code there, Talkin' Ball, 20% off. Lewis says, how is it so hard for the Giants to cover on defense? Great question. Who was that? Was it Bruce Arians? Which that was kind of a funny comment from him, but obviously he's respected in the league, a respected coach, former coach. But I heard him say on a show recently, he said if they could just fix the secondary, they would be a pretty good team. That was a strange comment to me because their front, hasn't stopped the run and can't stop the run. But I know what he's saying about how pitiful it is on the back end too. So that was just an interesting point. Giants forcing a Raiders punt here. Chris says maybe we get a shot at Mike Tomlin after today. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see between Tomlin and Harbaugh. Does a coach shake out of either of those situations based on the result in Week 18 for the Giants search? Daniel was funny. Before the scoring got going, he said if a game ever finished 0-0, this might be it. Giants proving you wrong. Oh, what do we got here? Got a little bit of a scuffle. Oh, I'm going to rewind this as I was talking. What do we have? Oh, some pushing and shoving up the field after Gunnar Olszewski steps out of bounds. We got some pushing and shoving behind the Giants bench. Abdul Carter. We got a couple Raiders involved getting walked out of there. With Jameis in the thick of things. Okay, 36 and 29. Oh, wow. Oh, boy. Punches thrown. Getting violent out here in Vegas. 3:23 to play, 14-3 Giants as the referees sort this out. That was Rico Payton basically going ham on a Raiders player. Life at Full Speed says, hey, Pat, any reason why Neighbors isn't with the team like Cam Scadaboo is? I know his recovery is far along enough to be on the sideline. I don't know the answer to that, Life. I think they've discussed with him, hey, prioritize your rehab and do what you can to get back full strength as soon as you can. I know that Kafka at a certain point recently said that he was now back rehabbing here with the team. So at first, my understanding was he was away from the team, got the surgery in Dallas, and was doing his rehab and his recovery initially locally to that. And then from there, it became, at least according to Mike Kafka and the Giants, it became returning to New Jersey and now being in the building. I don't know why we see him as prominently as we do a Scadaboo. I do think that, does that mean he's doing the wrong thing? Not necessarily, but I do think it matters, being around, showing support for your teammates. So if you can, you do it. I think that's interesting that you note that. One thing I'm interested about, just when talking about Neighbors and Scadaboo, like someone mentioned earlier, that Jackson being evaluated without those two on the field for once and for all wouldn't be fair to him. I'm interested to see how early next season they can get a close to full strength version of either of those players, just because they're severe injuries, and Neighbors, of course, with the knee, that's a fairly typical now, surgery and recovery. So he'll be back. He'll eventually be back at some sort of full strength, but sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it becomes a thing where instead of 2020 2026 being the year that you're excited Neighbors is back. It's going to be maybe 2026 back on the field, 2027 the version of Neighbors that you're really truly excited about and we're talking about here. And then Scadaboo's a little bit of an unknown too. I mean, it's encouraging that he's walking without a boot, that he's around. But again, like I think if I'm a fan, the second either of them steps back on the field, I'm excited. But if I'm somebody internally managing my expectations for either of them being the true top form of themselves, I'm looking at progressing towards 2027 for that rather than being the 2026, return like gangbusters and explosive version of themselves. Let's see. They're definitely tanky, man, that they could have tackled on that way sooner than the 50-yard line. Pat, let's get a round of golf in North Jersey once the weather warms up, says Lewis. All right, Lewis, a golfer, a fellow golfer. I like it. Wow, Wan'Dale Robinson wide open down the field. Breaks a tackle, too. Wan'Dale having a big day. Joe says, Joe was saying that he didn't want Bobby Okereke to run the interception back. He wanted him to fall down. A lot of coverage bust from the Raiders today. Hunter says, Pat, can you do a watch along for some playoff games and watch as impartial fans? Yeah, I think that would be fun. It should be an exciting playoffs. Parity has never been greater in the NFL. So I'm more than open to that. We'll keep you guys all apprised of that. Michael says, very funny, Pat, revealing Giants have definitely secured second pick, even if a win. Yeah, basically with the Browns winning now, even if the Giants win, right now they would only slip as far as 2 at the moment. So right today, if you lose, you vault very high chances to becoming the team that's drafting first overall. And if you win, you're not falling any further than 2 after this week. So Carroll gets fired after 1 year on a 3-year deal. Wow. Will Carroll ever coach in the NFL again? No. Riddle thinks the Giants are definitely going to win this game. We'll see. They definitely are showing more energy and more production out on the field right now than the Raiders are. I don't know how Gino didn't see Bobby there. Yeah. Francis thinks Bobby O performed well this season. I wouldn't go that far, Francis. I would say that it's a good thing to see Bobby stay healthy for the full season, and that down the stretch of the year, he has looked much better than he looked, let's say, last season at the beginning of this year. I don't believe that it's fair to say that anyone associated prominently with this defense or with this run defense has done a good job. But I definitely have seen in person in a lot of their games recently, despite the disappointment on the field, there have been certain moments where you see a Giants defender closing quickly or showing some good speed and instinct, and you say, out of the corner of your eye, like, you're like, whoa, who was that? What is going on here? Jamal Adams and Jameis Winston face to face. What was Jamal Adams was talking to Shea Tierney? Why was Shea Tierney talking to Jamal Adams? What was that? Okay, so the play goes out to out of bounds. Wan'Dale Robinson, Jamal Adams runs over. Oh, Shea Tierney looked like he was maybe trying to get to. Looked like Shea Tierney was trying to get to Wan'Dale Robinson, and Adams kept going out of bounds, and Shea Tierney, the Giants quarterback coach, and Jamal Adams, the Raiders safety, bump into each other. And now Adams is asking him what he's doing, and they're talking. Now Jameis is in Jamal Adams's face. Man, this is crazy. Missing a wild one here, fellas. Jameis wants to be involved in these games so badly. You look around the league at the quarterbacks and the players that some of these teams are starting. Like, it's a shame that Jameis is not playing. This one's getting real chippy, though, real fast, this game. Who knew that the Tank Bowl would have so much emotion? Hunter says Wandale's going to go over 1,000 today. Michael says, yeah, Oregon QB is my number 2. Definitely a good chip. Let's see. Francis says, final decision. I'm going to wear my Giants beanie only because I'm a fan. Joe says, Pat, heard you on Gary Myers' show. I think you said Chris Mara wanted to be the Giants GM, but Mara said no. Who said that? I did not say that. Oh, did Gary say that Chris Mara wanted to be the GM, but Mara said no? I don't know where you heard that. That maybe Gary said that on the show. I was talking about ownership and the trajectory of the franchise, but no. If I mentioned Chris Mara, it was regarding that he is, he's taken a more prominent role recently in the organization with John Mara battling cancer, and that going into the offseason as the Giants determine how the ownership structure is going to look and who is going to make these ultimate calls, Chris Mara is involved in that. But no, I did not make a comment like you're referring to. It sounds like you're saying Gary might have said that. I think a lot of you in here are talking about how you'd like to see Dart rather than Mendoza, but there is some split. See if the Giants can punch one in here and really put it on the Raiders. It's 14-3, 3rd and 5, 123 remaining. Jackson Dart checks it down to Singletary, and Devin Singletary gets stopped short of the sticks. The official is telling them it's a first down, but he was short. So I don't know what that was about. Maybe the ball was further than Singletary's body. Yeah, that was a weird call by that official. The NFL is an officiating crisis. I mean, every week there's a game that you're watching, and in the fourth quarter, you see a call that it feels like is dramatically impacting the result, and it just makes you shake your head. It's not an easy job. No one's going to sit here and say that officiating an NFL game is easy. But it's got to look something differently. That, like, Pete Carroll is losing his mind looking at this. The NFL needs more consistency. They just need more consistency. Players, coaches, front office members, people involved with any sports league, they know they don't control always like what the rules are or how to judge what pass interference is, let's say, or catches. They just want to know what the ultimate decision is on that rule, and then they want it applied consistently. As long as it's consistent. Like, it's, if any of you have ever played basketball or pick up basketball, it's the same thing. It's the idea of, okay, if I start playing a game in the first quarter, I get hit in the arm going into the lane, and the ref doesn't call it. It's like, okay, now I know that that's not a foul today. Fine. The only thing you don't want is in the fourth quarter, now your guy you're guarding comes into the lane and you get his arm and they blow the whistle. And now it's, well, wait a minute. That wasn't a foul in the first quarter, right? If it's a foul, it's a foul today. If it's not a foul today, it's not a foul today. Just be consistent. And that's what's going on in the NFL right now. It's crazy. It's just misapplication of rules, lack of consistency, and big missed calls in key spots. Not that this one is a key spot, right? But that just, to me, live, I could be wrong. Live, that looked like he was clearly about a half a yard short. And that ref was adamantly pointing them, move the chains. And it looked like everybody else in the field was thinking, really? RX says 2 things. Dart moves well in the pocket, and when his fundamentals and footwork are right, he is a high potential quarterback. Mendoza is not a top sure thing, just the best in a terrible draft. That is a very good breakdown. Very good breakdown there. Who was that? RX? RX knows ball. Yeah, I think that's well said. All right, let's see. All right, so we have less than a minute. Yeah, so the call was overturned. It was like I thought. It was an obvious short of the sticks situation. So we have a minute left in the first half. So what I'm going to do is go through the end of the half, and then I'll try to take a few more questions, and then we'll wrap up. I will do my writing during the second half on the game for the New York Daily News. And then after the game, we will have a separate live chat here on the same channel, same YouTube channel, Talking Ball Live with Pat Leonard. The handle on YouTube is PL on NFL. I will put the link in the chat now. So this is the link to that live chat. And we will go live after the game and do about a half an hour of Talking Ball post-game live, and we'll break down the result and where everything goes from here. So we'll wrap this up at the end of the half, and then second half you'll be on your own watching the game, and then jump back into the link I just dropped in the queue for our post-game live chat of Raiders-Giants. Oh boy, the Raiders just jumped off sides on 4th and 1. This game is, please cover my eyes. Gerard Mayo did suck as a coach. Well put. Let's see. We got Brian Thomas wants Marcus Freeman. So, guys, if you have a comment or question you want answered immediately, super chat or super sticker now. Otherwise, jump back into post game live. Let's see. Francis says, with all due respect to Russell Wilson, he did not live up to Shane's expectations. It proved to be a poor decision. Perhaps Giants could not land anyone else. That was part of it, but it was also who Shane adjudged was going to be their best option given the circumstances. And Shane was a part of not making Jameis Winston a part of any competition. Jackson Dart throws for the end zone, incomplete. So the key, what you're looking for in a situation like this, so the Giants have 2nd and 10 here going in, all 3 timeouts, 43 seconds remaining. So because you have all 3 timeouts here, you have your whole playbook open. You can run the ball, you can throw the ball. You do not need to be in drop back pass game here. So right now they're lining up an empty. They're at the 20-yard line, 2nd and 10. See, this could be a Jackson Dart design run here because you have 3 timeouts. And look at the way the Raiders are lined up. That's what I would be doing. They throw the ball to Wan'Dale Robinson, and he gains 10 yards anyway because the Raiders stink. That's over the middle of the field. 1st and goal for the Giants. My Tony Romo prediction didn't work there. But seriously, if you're managing a game, you have everything at your disposal there. You have all 3 of your timeouts, and you want to bleed it down and score. And then the Raiders are getting the ball at the start of the second half as well. So you're trying to tack on as much as you can here and win the middle of the game. GCN says, Pat, Seattle knew Geno was done and let him go. I don't think Geno's done. I don't think he's a guy who puts a team. He's never been a guy who puts a team on his back, Like, how Sam Darnold now has become a guy who is playing well within a sound structure with good coaching. Like, I think that's what Geno Smith did in Seattle, He played well with a good supporting cast, with good coaching, with a sound structure. 1st and goal at the 9-yard line with 32 seconds left. Dart back to pass, throws. Looked like he bobbled the snap there, low snap. Hodgins wasn't out of his break. Incomplete. Dart takes a hit. Giants use one of their timeouts there. Too many underperforming plays each Sunday. Life at full speed. Yes, great to see you. Beautiful home, by the way. Yeah, thanks. Virtual background, but hopefully the home looks like this one day. What is the snow situation like here? Did you have to shovel a lot of snow? We had about 5 inches or so. Not bad. Good sledding snow. Scorpio thinks Jackson Dart will be a bust. Let's see. So Dart under pressure rolls to his left, is being chased, gets walloped, throws the ball to the back of the end zone. The pass is broken up. Hopefully Dart's okay. Took a big hit there from might have been Devin White. Slayton was doing well, it looked like on a scramble drill here to try to get open. Man, Dart. Oh, hit his head on the ground there. Nice pass breakup. Pass was a little high too. Don't like seeing this. Jackson hitting his head. Oof. Well, any of you who were tired of seeing him evaluated, it's not happening today. 3rd and goal. A screen to Tyrone Tracy. Garbage call from Kafka there. Ugh. Yuck. Yikes. Horrendous call. But that sets the Giants up for a field goal. So if they get it, they'll go up 17-3. And they will lead by 2 touchdowns going into the locker room. Jamal Adams all banged up. Looks like he has his helmet off. He's trying to shake it off right now. Don't like that call. Francis says Pat's wife and family didn't want him sneaking off to the casino. Francis, you're hilarious. Ooh, Adams got bent back. H-Town says Thibodeau put himself on IR for the rest of the year early in the season because he knew this was a wash of a season. It seems as if the Giants don't convince him to stay, he will ask to be traded elsewhere. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think it is disappointing. I think, to be honest, I think Kayvon wanted to be on the field because going into this year, this offseason, he would have liked to have, after a year where he trained hard, he came into the season in the best shape that I've seen him in the NFL, and his motor was excellent. He just wasn't finishing at the quarterback as much as he would have liked, but he would have rather had 2.5 more than the 2.5 sacks he is going to finish the season with for sure. So I do think he wanted to get back on the field, and at least my understanding was he intended to be back on the field coming out of the bye, and then something changed with the shoulder sprain that he had. So Ben Sauls is good with that field goal. 17-3 Giants at halftime over the Raiders. So who's winning? Are the Giants winning or the Raiders winning? Giants are winning the game. Raiders are winning the race to the number 1 overall pick at the moment. Hooks, rubs, and spices. Jared says, hey, Pat and Chad, happy holidays to y'all. Here watching Red Zone because I'm in Utah. For some reason, the Eagles-Bills is on local TV here compared to the game that is 6-hour drive away. Well, Jared, in fairness, most people aren't sickos like you wanting to watch the Tank Bowl instead of 2 teams that are headed to the playoffs. Oh, I just saw Darnay Holmes walk across the screen. But yeah, no, just joking around. Jared, I don't know if you were here when we did, but talked about the Hooks, Rubs, and Spices pepper sauce that you were kind enough to send a sample my way as well. Our sponsor, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, along with my bookie, Boom Chaka Mushroom Super Drink, and Salad for Men. Hooksrub.com is the website. Go to hooksrub.com and use the code TalkinBall, and you'll get 25% off your order there. Does John Mara go to away games, says Daniel. He hasn't been lately when I've been there. Chris Mara has been the ranking Mara that I have seen on the road. Let's see. Jared says, imagine our players finally showing some fight when they had 5 games in a row with a lead, didn't show fight to win those. Now we're here. I truly hate being pessimistic, but this team has me here. Joe says, Pat, Giants need to trade down, draft the Ohio State wide receiver. No drops this year, and love of Notre Dame. So if we win, we are number 2. I mean, that's not bad. We could still trade down, not for a top pick, but more picks, says Jared. Let's see. Gino finally writing back, giving away interception gifts for Christmas. Yes, Lewis, thanks for saying that. Please give the live stream a like. Please hit the like button while we are here. And please subscribe to the channel if you didn't already. And also drop comments or reviews in the queue. Really appreciate you guys being here. This has been the Talkin' Ball first half Tank Bowl watch along of Giants Raiders with Pat Leonard, New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer. I'm going to dip out of this now, but we will be back on Talkin' Ball post-game live right after the game ends. I'm just going to spend the second half writing for the Daily News, filing for the Daily News, and then I will jump right back on YouTube with you all post-game. And if I didn't get to any of your questions in here already, like I see someone right now asking about Jalen Hurts. I see somebody asking about players on the roster that I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't come back next year. Please come back to Postgame Live on our YouTube channel on Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard and drop those questions in the queue. Reminder, if you purchase a super chat or super sticker, your comment or question will be answered first. We will do about a half an hour after the game, 45 minutes if we're cooking, and we will evaluate where we go from here. Joe Shane, Jackson Dart, the Giants, and different parts of their roster, and away we go into Week 18 off of whatever comes to pass in the second half of the Giants in Vegas, right now leading by 2 touchdowns over Pete Carroll's team with the number 1 pick on the line. This has been Pat Leonard. Thank you so much for joining me for the watch along from my bookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom Chaga, and Salad for Men. It's so long for now, but see you later right back here on YouTube on Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard post-game live to break down the latest and to talk about what we talked about at the top of the show, which is the NFL Network report that Joe Shane is expected to be here at least through the draft with the Giants, and that they would be open to all options at number 1, including drafting a QB in Fernando Mendoza if they land that pick, which put pressure on Jackson Dart going into this game. See you guys soon here on YouTube, Talkin' Ball post-game live.